New details tonight after a fire forced hundreds to shelter in place in the Metro East. The fire at a shipping container facility in Sauget involved a hazardous chemical. The shelter-in-place order impacted families preparing for their third day of school in the East St. Louis School District. Well, First Alert 4 investigates digging into the company and the chemical in question. Chief Investigative Reporter Lauren Traeger has new details.
Let's start first with the chemical itself and what potential risks or concerns it might pose in a situation like this. Its full name is trichloroisocyanuric acid, or TCCA as it's referred to. It's a compound that can be used in industrial and even home settings for things like killing bacteria or algae in swimming pools, even for bleaching, cleaning, or sanitizing in certain uses. Now, while it will dissolve in large bodies of water, it is reactive to smaller amounts of water and can cause explosions or a plume. If there is human contact, TCCA can irritate the skin, the eyes, or the lungs. We spoke with a chemist to learn more about the possible impacts if anyone is exposed for a long time or in large quantities.
I think anytime you have a fire, there's dangerous chemicals that come out of that. Just even a house fire, you don't want to be breathing that smoke. And so I don't think there's any risk that's higher than any other types of fires, but the origin of this was that chemical that releases the chlorine gas, and chlorine gas is really nasty.
Now take a look at this video. TCCA was at the center of a much larger incident in 2020 after a hurricane hit and damaged a chemical facility in Louisiana. That same chemical got wet, then there was this massive fire and a very large plume. But Dr. Voss tells us that in that case and in the fire in Sauget, once that plume dissipates into the environment, it's not likely to have lasting impacts. But that's why he says it was so important that the public sheltered in place so to avoid exposure. So now to this company. The facility here in Sauget houses shipping containers. It's owned by a company called Container Port Group. Now we checked with the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. There are no reports of violations at that facility. Illinois regulators haven't found any violations either since 2013. In the newsroom, I'm Lauren Traeger. First Alert 4 investigates.